Hey everybody, it's Alex Miller at Capneon here. You may have seen in the news recently that OpenAI has abandoned its recent effort to reincorporate as a for-profit business. I'm going to share this news story, explain some background, and then go a little bit into why it's all important and probably not over. OpenAI has a pretty unusual journey behind it that's left it with some pretty weird and problematic corporate governance. They used to be a not-for-profit research laboratory with a very save-the-world kind of mission. And along the way, they opened up a for-profit arm that then began to take on lots and lots of big money investment and selling products to people. And that's an iffy situation for a variety of reasons. It's pretty much unprecedented for a not-for-profit to have a for-profit subsidiary. And then the question is, what is the not-for-profit supposed to do with that situation ethically and within the legal guardrails that are given to it about how it's supposed to function? OpenAI has been spending lots of money making lots of cool models and giving them to us at a loss. And among other things, this has put them in a position where they would really like to do an initial public offering someday. They both need, eventually, probably to raise more money from investors than they can do through private channels like venture capital. And then also all the people that have put in their money thus far would like a way to get liquid again. And the traditional, and in this case, relatively obvious way is to do an IPO. Okay, great. You're a not-for-profit. Well, how does that work? And what are the rules for how to do it? And they're under pressure. So you may have seen elsewhere that in a recent fundraising round where OpenAI raised a lot of money from SoftBank, SoftBank put a rider in the contract that said they didn't have to come up with a second phase of money they were pledged to give unless OpenAI managed to restructure in a way that would allow them to do an IPO. So once again, OpenAI needs investors. Investors want to see something on the horizon like an IPO. Otherwise, what am I doing with this investment? Can I really make money on it? And then once again, making money is as highly uncertain as an activity for OpenAI to be engaged in, given their governance. So they were trying to reincorporate it as a for-profit. Elon Musk was one of the original donors in the not-for-profit days. He's pretty salty, and I don't know his heart, but it's not difficult to see why. He's operating a for-profit business that competes with OpenAI's for-profit arm. That's a real drag. It's probably strange to him and unwanted that his donation to a not-for-profit is boomeranging into a competitor. One real scary bad thing about this unusual governance situation is if somebody sues, what happens? And it's often the case with lawsuits. If the lawsuit takes a billion years and it's really complicated, that's as bad as losing. That's the kind of position that OpenAI is in. So it sounds like between the lines that they talked to legal authorities in Delaware and California, which I take to be the most relevant places, and they didn't like what they saw in terms of what kind of legal road lay ahead of them trying to turn their not-for-profit into a for-profit to IPO. And looks like they've temporarily abandoned that path. Interesting twist. Now OpenAI is trying to reform as a public benefit corporation. Ironically, this has a lot of the same problems again, although less uniquely. A public benefit corporation, as opposed to a regular for-profit corporation, is allowed to balance ethical needs, saving the world, with making shareholders money. A for-profit corporation is really just supposed to be making shareholders money. Why are they doing this? Well, I have some guesses. A lot of the top talent in the AI world is eager to sleep easier on Skynet-type issues. So OpenAI doesn't want to look like the most evil make money or bust actor in the room. Anthropic, for example, is also a public benefit corporation. So one, they are in a position where they need to look morally shiny enough in front of stakeholders like talent. Public benefit corporation, it's worth noting here, will still have some of the same problems, and it's a new thing, hasn't been tested in court that many times. Whenever you have two competing goals, like saving the world and making money, they can come into conflict, and well-meaning people can disagree on what should happen, and that can turn into lawsuits. And one of my big themes here is that lawsuits really suck, and you don't want to be involved in an awful lawsuit. OpenAI is on a difficult tightrope walk, avoiding really exciting existential lawsuits. But one nice thing about a public benefit corporation is that it could also conceivably do an IPO. So this keeps them in the game on the important investor relations, fundraising, financial strategic axis. Why does this wrinkle maybe help them? Well, Elon Musk, in the lawsuit he did not yet get around to filing, would likely have argued, well, this is a not-for-profit with this save the world kind of mission, and this very for-profit path they're trying to take is not consistent with that mission, and therefore something should happen to rectify it. The optics from the standpoint of that potential lawsuit are significantly better for a public benefit corporation, assuming it's living up to its obligations and that it's no longer true, at least in what's on paper, that OpenAI is becoming this purely money-grabbing capitalist machine that doesn't care about taking over the world. They can say, oh, no, we are maintaining the original mission, and we're just balancing it with money-making concerns under the aegis of this shiny and exciting but significantly unproven new legal construct, just the past 20 years or so, the Public Benefit Corporation. So at this point in the story, in a lot of ways, you can say, well, nothing has really happened other than we have verified, I would say, everybody knows, at least OpenAI knows, it's strategically very important for them to IPO. They're in a really weird, bad position from a legal risk, corporate governance standpoint to walk the strange road that they need to walk to get to an IPO. And the most direct and obvious route to them, because of those legal risks, currently looks untenable, and they're trying something else. Will it work? I don't know. And if I was going to point to one risk factor, it's that it's hard for anyone to know, because public benefit corporations are relatively untried in court. So the risk factor here is, once again, not only are these legal risks around that could undermine the things that OpenAI financially really needs, but the legal risks are always really murky, and that is just bad news in business. OpenAI is amongst the most important and visible companies in AI, especially on the software and algorithmic side, and they've got a pretty exciting boardroom soap opera going that I think is worth continuing to pay attention to, because there are going to be more developments like this. There's going to be more material for me to make videos and articles for you. And how it all shakes in the end could matter a lot for your efforts to get access to an LLM and potentially build something in a more prosaic context.